East to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots, seas running 2 to 4 feet over the ocean, while in the southeast Bahamas, an easterly to southeasterly flow at 15 knots continuing, seas running 3 to 5 feet. Here's a look now at your national forecast. Here's a look now at your extended forecast through Saturday. That's a look at your weather. Make it a great night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for Our News Tonight. To catch our news on the go, download the RevGo Play app. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Jared Higgs. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.
Hurricane season is upon us, and Rev wants to ensure that you have all the information that you need to keep your family and valuables safe. We recommend the following. Buy and stock supplies before a storm approaches. Be sure to shop for items like lanterns, flashlights, and batteries to ensure that they are available when you need them. Keep all important documents in a safe and dry place. Create a hurricane safety kit in the event of a mandatory evacuation. These kits should include water, food, blankets, and clothing. Evacuate low-lying areas or communities where flooding advisories have been given. Ensure that you have a full tank of gasoline in all your vehicles. Do not attempt to do electrical work or work on a generator once a storm is within the area. Ensure that you have access to a radio and a landline telephone. If the center or eye of a hurricane passes over your area, there will be a brief period during which the winds will come to a lull. Do not assume that it is safe. Be sure to wait for the all clear given only through the proper authorities. And we hope that you and your family stay safe this hurricane season.
We know you missed us. We missed you too. Bowflex Barbie here, and I'm so excited to let you know that Morning Moves is coming back to RTV Channel 212. Starting September 7th, every Monday and Wednesday at 6 and 9 a.m. and Saturday at 8 and 10 a.m., you'll get to sweat with me right from the comfort of your home. Be sure to tune in for my fun and exciting workouts and health tips from our wellness experts. Join me for Morning Moves, the perfect way to start your day.
So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
at the conference, the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
Happy Foods, Happy Foods, 242, 242, Happy Foods, 242, food galore just for you. Happy Food, 242, food galore just for you. This ain't no talking show, it's an eating show. Sasha Laurel is the host of Happy Foods, 242, food galore just for you. Happy Foods, 242, food galore.
This is an RTV special report.
Fellow citizens and residents, good evening. Around the world and here at home, the COVID-19 virus continues its aggressive assault on the lives of millions of people who are being infected and hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their lives. Let me note that the number of people who are being infected and who have died is likely to be much higher than official international statistics. Tonight, I once again report to you on the battle we are waging to aggressively respond to this killer virus. COVID-19 will continue to spread uncontrollably if we do not immediately take more aggressive and comprehensive measures, most of which are also being taken by other countries. I fully appreciate the burden of many of these measures on you and on our country. But I assure you, they are being taken to save the lives of you and your loved ones, and to restore our economy and society as much as possible during this global pandemic. This is my solemn and constitutional duty as your Prime Minister. We are in an emergency. The surge in cases has put exceptional strain on our healthcare system. We must act now and aggressively as possible to prevent our healthcare system from collapsing. If our hospitals collapse, we will have many more deaths. We are all at risk from this deadly virus. None of us are immune. We are more than fellow citizens and residents. We are all children of Almighty God, equally and wonderfully made in God's image and likeness. We are our brothers and sisters keepers. We belong to each other. What binds us together as Bahamians and as fellow human beings, including the love of life itself, is stronger and more powerful and more resilient than our differences and our wonderful diversity. Today, I spoke with the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Philip Brave Davis, who has tested positive for COVID-19 and who is presently in hospital. He and I may lead different political parties, but we are Bahamian brothers, and we both have important constitutional roles and duties. We spoke for about 15 minutes. I assured him of my support, my friendship, and my prayers. I ask you, my fellow Bahamians, to offer him your prayers and your support for his full recovery. Let us also pray for all of those who are in hospital or at home or have tested positive. Dear brothers and sisters, today, the Ministry of Health reported 14 new cases, all in New Providence. This brings the total number of confirmed cases to 1,329. These cases include 731 on New Providence, 461 on Grand Bahama, 45 cases on Bimini, inclusive of Cat Key, 44 cases on Abaco, 14 cases on the Berry Islands, 8 on Cat Island, 5 on Exuma, 1 on Eleuthera, 2 on Inagua, 1 on Andres, and locations pending are 17. There are 1,116 active cases, 191 recovered cases, and 32 hospitalized cases. 19 deaths have been confirmed to date. I once again offer condolences to the families of those who have died. Our prayers and our sympathy are with you during this very painful and difficult time. Based on health indicators and risk criteria, the government has taken a localized response to the fight against COVID-19. Differentiated treatment for our family of islands is being applied depending on the indicators and risk criteria identified by our health professionals. There are 3 categories. Level 1. These islands have been individually assessed by health professionals and have been deemed to have minimal risk in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is either because there are no cases, there is no suspected COVID-19 activity, or the other indicators are such that there is no heightened risk when considered cumulatively. These islands presently have no lockdown or curfew in place, but they are required to exercise physical distancing protocols, sanitization, and the wearing of face masks. These presently include Mayaguana, Inagua, Chubkey, Crooked Island, Acklands, Long Key, Long Island, Rum Key, and Ragged Island. Level 2. These islands are considered to have high risk in the face of COVID-19 pandemic, based on the performance of the indicators being monitored by our health professionals. These islands are presently under current restrictions found in Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Lockdown Order 2020. And Level 3. The health professionals have found it necessary, based on the present indicators, to recommend that a 3rd category be designated. This would reflect islands where critical risk in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic exists. This would warrant greater restrictions to fight the pandemic than are presently found under the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Lockdown Order 2020. Based on the number of new cases and other indicators regularly reported on by the Ministry of Health, we are all aware that the 2 islands in the most grave of situations are New Providence and Grand Bahama. I am pleased and personally relieved to say that health officials are beginning to see progress in Grand Bahama. They have recommended a continuation of the present level of restrictions to control and slow the spread of COVID-19 on the island. As such, the present lockdown restrictions, the 18th of August, 2020. The current restrictions will continue to apply to all other islands presently under the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Lockdown Order 2020. However, the data on New Providence and the advice of health officials are extremely clear. More restrictive measures are absolutely necessary in order to bring the virus under control here on New Providence. Health indicators on New Providence show a very large number of new cases, an increase in hospitalization, and, unfortunately, an increase in the number of deaths. If further restrictive measures are not taken to control and to slow the spread of COVID-19 on New Providence at this time, it will take a very long time to bring the virus under control. The sooner we bring the virus under control, the shorter the time will be to return to few restrictive measures. Unfortunately, too many people are not taking the current lockdowns and health measures seriously. Some people are gathering in groups in their neighborhoods. Some are going out where unnecessary. Some are not following health guidelines when out in public. Some are going out visiting friends and families. And some have booked themselves in hotels and having the time of their life. Some people are having social and parties. The virus is spreading rapidly because of the failure of many to adhere to life-saving and preventative measures. But I also again acknowledge and thank all of those who have followed the health guidelines over the many months. Thank you. Thank you sincerely for your cooperation. I also thank those who have offered advice, constructive ideas, and assistance, and a spirit of love and unity during these difficult months and difficult days. We continue to ask and welcome your advice, which you may send to the Office of the Prime Minister website, opm.gov.bs, where many Bahamians and residents have already offered helpful and positive suggestions. Fellow residents of New Providence, tonight I am announcing further measures to more aggressively battle COVID-19 in New Providence. The restrictions I am about to announce will apply for a period of 7 days. They are effective immediately. At the end of 7 days, health officials will make an assessment and a determination taken on whether an extension is required. The new measures are as follows. Public offices will be closed except for essential staff. Public officers are to work remotely except those who have expressly been identified in the orders as essential workers or identified by the permanent secretaries of their respective ministries. Only the following essential services will be continued: any hospital, public health care, public medical facility, and public pharmacies. Private medical facilities for emergencies only. Public Hospital Authority and its agencies. Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Bahamas Customs Department, Department of Immigration, Department of Corrective Services, Department of Environmental Health Services, Waste Disposal and Sanitation Services, Bahamas Civil Aviation Department, Utility Corporations for Emergency and Critical Services only, National Food Distribution Task Force. The provisions that will apply in respect to commercial activities are as follows. Hotels will be permitted to operate with essential staff, provided the names of employees are submitted to the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Essential media personnel may operate. However, they will be required to contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force 311 number when they are required to be on the streets of New Providence. Construction may continue. Financial institutions, which are required to carry out urgent transactions from within the institution, may contact the 311 hotline for permission to travel to and from their respective offices. International shipping, freight forwarders, and domestic freight will be permitted to continue. However, goods and supplies are to be stored during this period. If approval is necessary during this emergency for businesses to collect such items, businesses must contact 311 hotline for permission. All other businesses and commercial activities will be closed and are required to work remotely. Provisions for other essential social and spiritual needs of our communities are as follows. The National Food Distribution Task Force will continue our distribution program on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as previously scheduled. Please contact your respective zone leaders if you have questions during this period. The Royal Bahamas Police Force will have lists of zones of all registrants of the program and will be checking vehicles to ensure that only one representative per household goes to the specific distribution center. I thank the food wholesalers and retailers who have given the government tremendous discounts for this food program. The following hotlines have been established for COVID-19 medical emergencies: 502-7382 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 376-9350 from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 376-9387 from 8 p.m. from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Allow me to repeat. 376-9387 from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. For other medical emergencies, please call 919 or 911. The Royal Bahamas Police Force will check all vehicles to determine where persons are headed and to confirm that these individuals contacted the Royal Bahamas Police Force emergency contact number for approval to be on the streets. This includes all government red plate vehicles. Those who do not comply will be fined according to the emergency powers order. Everyone who wishes to move in the case of an emergency must contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force 11 number. Let me say again, if an individual does not have a valid reason or approval to be on the streets, they will be fined. Persons who tend to shelter or farm animals will be permitted to do so. However, they will be required to contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force 311 number when they are required to be on the streets. I repeat, the Royal Bahamas Police Force will stop every vehicle on the street. And if you do not have a valid reason for being on the street, you will be fined and be brought to the courts. Subsistence and commercial fishing from New Providence is discontinued during this time. Graveside funerals, which had been previously planned and scheduled during this period, may continue. Weddings will not be permitted during this period. Churches may continue to live stream from their premises on Saturday and Sunday, with a maximum of 10 persons present at the sanctuary. And these persons will be required to contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force before departing to go on the streets. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the church, the people of the Bahamas, for your prayers and words of encouragement. My government and I greatly appreciate your prayers and the undergirding that we feel, and as we seek to lead our nation through this pandemic. Persons may exercise in their immediate neighborhoods in the mornings between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. daily. You may also exercise in your yards, if applicable, at any point during the day and night. Diplomatic missions will continue to be permitted to be open. However, members of the public required to utilize their services, for example, nationals of the respective countries needing services and students seeking visas, will be required to contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force 311 number before traveling to and from a diplomatic office. Operation Bahamas Turks and Caicos will be permitted to carry on its services. Provisions that will apply in respect of international domestic travels are as follows. There will be no international flights or vessels permitted to enter New Providence. Only in exceptional and urgent circumstances will permission be granted by the Director General of Civil Aviation or the chairperson of the Bahamas Maritime Authority for such flights or vessels to enter New Providence. International flights and vessels will be able to depart from New Providence. In respect of the entire country, there will be a further tightening of the entry requirement for COVID-19 negative test results. These test results will now have to be valid within 5 days of entry instead of 10 days of entry. There will be no travel domestically between New Providence and the other islands of the Bahamas, except for freight and for emergencies. My fellow citizens and residents, I wish to say again to the residents of New Providence that the week-long total lockdown will allow health officials to evaluate and monitor the spread of COVID-19 on our island, New Providence. I know this lockdown is a sacrifice and hardship for many Bahamians and residents, but it will assist in slowing the spread of COVID-19 and getting our life and our economy back to normal. At the end of the lockdown period, officials will assess the data to help inform the way forward. I will report to you again on the impact of the lockdown as soon as possible. My fellow Bahamians, we are using a variety of measures to slow the spread of COVID-19, including lockdowns, curfews, contact tracings, permitting low-risk commercial and social activities, all of which are being used by most countries in the world. Democracies and countries everywhere are utilizing these measures, which have been recommended by global health officials, including the World Health Organization. We have made significant advances in our contact tracing programs. Since the Contact Tracing Command Center was established at the Malaya Hotel last month, the vast majority of contacts have been contacted. Health officials are getting closer to identifying all cases and contacts. By identifying all cases and contacts, this will help to bring this deadly infectious virus under control. On Grand Bahama, I am pleased to announce that on Grand Bahama, 87%, let me repeat, on Grand Bahama, 87% of COVID-19 confirmed cases have been contacted and are being monitored. And 80% of contacts of COVID-19 cases have been identified. On New Providence, 82% of the COVID-19 confirmed cases have been contacted and are being monitored. And 80% of the contacts of COVID-19 cases have been contacted. This is great news. This news is so great, my fellow Bahamians, that I must repeat it. On Grand Bahama, 87% of COVID-19 confirmed cases have been contacted and are being monitored. And 80% of contacts of COVID-19 cases have been identified. On New Providence, 82% of COVID-19 confirmed cases have been contacted and are being monitored. And 80% of contacts of COVID-19 cases have been contacted. Again, this is great news. Aggressive contact tracing is ongoing. Progress is also being made on clearing the backlog at the National Reference Laboratory. The full resources of the government are being used to contain this virus, including the Ministry of Health, Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Social Services, Office of the Prime Minister, Ministry of Finance, the Department of Immigration, the Department of Transformation and Digitization, and other government agencies. We are also grateful to our private sector partners Breezes Super Clubs, Alive, BTC, and the Malia Hotel. My fellow citizens, the framers of the Constitution anticipated there would be times of emergency when some of our constitutional rights and freedoms would have to be curtailed in the public's interest and for the public safety. Indeed, as noted by leading jurists in our country, the requirement for the constitutionality of various provisions is that they are reasonably justifiable in the circumstances of public emergency. Indeed, our founding fathers wisely placed in our Constitution provisions allowing the Governor General to declare proclamation of emergency. Such proclamations exist to allow the government to act to protect the people in times of great national crisis. We are in such a time. In this pandemic, we faced our worst crisis in our history as a sovereign nation. If the government did not have the emergency powers, there would be mass death in the Bahamas beyond the imagination of most of us. Those who tell you the emergency powers are not necessary are unserious and dead wrong. Let me repeat. Those who tell you the emergency powers are not necessary are unserious and dead wrong. The government uses the emergency powers to enforce provisions that save lives. The virus has caused so much death across our hemisphere. Watching the international news, there are stories of young people in neighboring countries whose entire household have died because of COVID-19. No more mother or father, no more grandparents, just a child or two children left alone after the virus took away everyone else. This is a pandemic the world has not seen in 100 years. We must harden our minds and make firm our resolve for a long fight with COVID-19. Many countries are battling their second or third wave. There will be more waves to come until there is a vaccine and most of the world has taken fit. Do not listen to those who come up with overly simplistic ideas telling you that if we just do certain things, that everything will be normal again quickly. The old normal is gone for now. In time, when there is a vaccine, a new normal will emerge. Until then, discipline and resilience are needed. Many countries and jurisdictions throughout the world have implemented the same measures that your government has to control the spread of this deadly virus. If we fully opened our economy and society and carried on as usual, without restrictions, more Bahamians would get sick and more would die. Then, the very same individuals who criticized government for emergency orders will then criticize the government for not acting to save lives. In these unprecedented times, no one, not even first world countries, have a full manual on how to manage this pandemic. My fellow Bahamians, as difficult as things are at this moment, I assure you that if we work together with a spirit of hope, a spirit of courage, of resilience, that we will beat this virus. This is a marathon requiring unity and love of and concern for neighbors. I think of those who are lending their time, talent, and treasure to help feed others. I know of business people who have retained staff throughout the pandemic. I continue to feel the power of prayer warriors who pray without ceasing. We all know doctors and nurses who are putting themselves at risk to care for our people. There are thousands of acts of kindness in our country. I thank the heads of churches and religious leaders, civic leaders, former jurists, fellow citizens, and others who, especially in the last few days, have joined voices and hearts to encourage our nation. In this moment, let us encourage each other. Let us be voices and people of hope and renewal. Even in the most difficult of this pandemic, I have never wavered in my belief that we will defeat this virus. I know this deep in my heart because I have seen and experienced the courage, the encouragement, the cooperation, the sacrifices, and the fortitude of so many of you. Please, continue to lift up the country in your prayers, including our brother Brave Davis and all of those affected by this virus, especially the poor and the most vulnerable in our country. My fellow Bahamians and residents, thank you for your attention and your cooperation. I thank you for your advice. Let us continue to demonstrate a love of neighbor and a love of country. May God continue to bless each and every one of you, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Is our ultra-convenient, highly processed, over-medicated, squeaky clean way of life making us sick?